Good evening, everyone. I'm Gina. I'm the Alumni and Stakeholder Engagement Manager at King's Business School, and it's wonderful to see you all here today. I'd like to give a warm welcome to you all to our first Women in Business and Law networking event. This is the first partnership event between the King's Business School and the Dickson Poon School of Law, so we're really excited to have everyone here. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to everyone joining us online. It's great to see alumni, student, colleagues, and the wider King's community here at the Science Gallery, London. Tonight, we'll explore the topic of dynamic leadership in the context of connecting legal services to business strategy, and we have a great panel of speakers this evening. Aleida Borges, Research Associate from the Global Institute of Women in Leadership, Laura Hamilton, Assistant Vice President at Deutsche Bank, and Meera Patel, Director at Deloitte London. The panel will take you through the topic for the next 45 minutes. The event is in a conversational Q&A style, so I hope many of you will participate in the discussion. In terms of housekeeping, bathrooms are just up the stairs where you just came through on the right-hand side. We're not expecting any fire alarms today, so if it does go off, please follow the colleagues up the stairs and out the main entrance. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and over to you, Aleida.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. It's really nice to see a full house, and we're here in person, so I'm so excited. So yeah, my name is Aleida, and I'm a researcher at the Global Institute for Women's Leadership. The Institute promotes equal and fair access to leadership for women of all backgrounds, and we undertake different activities, from rigorous research to using our research then to find and create evidence-based training for women leaders. We also work towards building a movement of leaders, experts, and activists to advocate for increased women's leadership at all levels globally. And we also do teaching and mentoring the next generation of leaders. So I will introduce our fantastic panel here. Just bear with me while I go through this excellent panel. So our first speaker is Meera Patel, who received her Bachelor's of Laws in 2009 and a Master's of Laws in International Finance in 2010. After King's, Meera pursued a corporate solicitor route with Layton and Watkins before uniquely combining her legal career with entrepreneurship and business strategy. At EY, Meera helped to drive the launch of EI's client-facing legal team before co-founding EI's Brexit strategy unit. Then moving on to Deloitte, she led the Brexit Legal Insight and is now a director within Deloitte's Structural Efficiency Group. And Meera spends her time mentoring young people, and her latest book, Get Into Law, aims at empowering students to make their own leaps from student to solicitor. Very exciting. Our second speaker, Laura Hamilton, works in Deutsche Bank Business Intelligence Unit as part of the Middle East and Africa team. Her role involves advising stakeholders across the bank on reputational and financial crime risks associated with prospective or current high-risk clients and transactions. Laura holds she has previously worked in smaller corporate intelligence and geopolitical risk consultancies, international communications for a FTSE 500 retailer, and legal publishing. She holds a BA in Spanish, Portuguese, and Brazilian studies, and an MA in conflict, security, and development, war studies, both from King's College London. Alongside her current role, she is also part of the leadership team for women in international security, UK, and a co-leader for the November Project London, which is the highest level of the President of the United States Volunteer Service Award. So this is a very exciting panel. So let's spend the next 45 minutes exploring this topic in depth and hearing about dynamic leadership, thinking beyond your role to connect legal service with business strategy. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Laura Hamilton and Meera Patel for today's discussion. Do you want to start?
Sure. So I think we're going to just kick off by talking about what dynamic leadership means, kind of what we see it as. It's something that I personally had to Google when I was first asked to speak at this, and I think it's quite interesting. I think we were talking about this before. it's quite a personal interpretation of what it means for you and kind of how you put it into practice. So I think my interpretation of it is kind of looking at it from, I guess, my linguistic background, and something dynamic is something that's quite changing, that's quite fluid, that is looking at how you can work with what you're working with at the time and the team you're with, and kind of making sure that you're kind of getting the best outcome through that, through whether that's leading a team or a project or whatever leadership looks like on that occasion, I guess is my short summary.
I think dynamic leadership can mean so many things to different people. I think for me the most important thing is leaders who have vision and having that vision communicated to your team. So for me it's vision. I've worked for people who don't share that vision with the junior people or anyone in their team, aren't clear on it, aren't transparent, and they don't end up creating an impact. And I think having a very clear vision and taking everyone with you and influencing and mentoring those people is incredibly, incredibly important. So I think being dynamic for me is about vision. So many other things though that we can talk about, having the right energy, being inclusive of people, and Aleida was mentioning this before, having an eye on who you're bringing into your team, for example. And I think there's so many ways to define being dynamic, and everyone will have their own ways of defining it. But for me, it's being visionary and communicating it and bringing everyone along with you and bringing that energy into the space that you're working in.
Absolutely. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, definitely. So what would you say day to day, what does it look like in your industries and what you do, dynamic leadership, when you think, especially trying to bridge between law and...
You want me to go first? So I'm very fortunate. So in my team at Deloitte, I actually created it from scratch. There was never a team doing corporate reorganizations end-to-end at Deloitte up until 2 years ago for the corporate industry. So when I was given the opportunity to create it from scratch, I intentionally looked to hire people into my team that were diverse in background, intentionally looked to hire senior women to come and work with me, and tried to move away from, I guess, the traditional Deloitte type of person that I was seeing being recruited into the business. And it was a great opportunity, and I hired about 10 people over the last 2 years during COVID, just off of Zoom interviews, because that's the world that we were living in. And now I'm seeing the fruits of that, because everyone's from a different part of the world in the team, and it's incredible. So I think hiring and having that view on who you're hiring, I think, is the first. And then the other way is having the right energy, because people can tell the energy that you bring into a room. I can tell when my boss walks in and he's in a bad mood and wants to, not create a safe space for everyone. And I think having that safe space, I think women especially bring empathy into a room when someone's had a bad day or someone's on their period or someone just wants to talk about something that happened. And I think having that is a really great way of being able to lead as a woman, because I think people really appreciate that, and I've certainly noticed that too. So those are a couple of the ways I'm trying to be dynamic. It's a constant journey, so hand over to Laura.
I think for me, I feel really lucky being in quite a dynamic team. I think it's not very hierarchical, so it's quite nice in that everyone kind of contributes what they can, and there's not that sort of there's a lot of kind of, I think empathy is a really important thing. A lot of you're contributing different skill sets, and I think the nature of what I do, because we're regional specialists, so everyone has a different specialty, so everyone is contributing something, and collectively we're working together for the best outcome. I think that kind of, and I think being quite, changeable and kind of looking at the day-to-day, I think is kind of really important in the terms of like dynamic leadership style from my side. I think that's probably, I guess, my side for this.
Wonderful. When we're talking about leadership, especially from the perspective of gender and leadership, we're often telling women that women don't have the skills that they need to have to be leaders. Or women need to be more confident, women need to do more. So we're always asking more of women. At the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, we're always emphasizing that the problem is not women. Institutions, organizations have to change. They have to change their approach and what they expect of people so that they can be open to different forms of leadership. So what kind of skills do you think it requires, dynamic leadership? What do you expect to see in a leader that is dynamic?
Okay. I think it's an understanding of who isn't in the room and how you can reach those people who would be excellent in your team, who would be great, but maybe don't have that confidence or don't know about that the job exists. Often, I think, is the case. I think it's also looking at what skill sets you have within it and how you can kind of bring out the best in people. Is something that I think is really important in terms of like being dynamic and kind of working with what you've got and also what is missing and how they fit together.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about this. So day to day, how can you be dynamic? I think firstly, being really interested in the people around you and mentoring them. I think a lot of people come to work for more than just to do their work and get paid and go home. I think when I look back at my career, and I've still got loads of my career to go, I remember the leaders who I really was inspired by or wanted to work for, and then the leaders that I didn't, and I probably left their team and went and worked for someone else. So the people that took an interest in me, saw what I was good at, saw what I wasn't good at, gave me opportunities to go and develop some skills or invested in me somehow. I think that for me is so important. So I'm trying to now do that with the people that are in my team. And also, I'm going back to what I was saying earlier about vision. I try and hold quarterly strategy meetings with my team to bring them along with that vision, because otherwise, again, it goes back to why are you coming to work? I think people want to be part of something, and I think we lost that a little bit over COVID because we weren't really around people day to day, but I think people still want to come to work and be part of something and want to know what they're aiming for and do that with other people. I know that's not for everyone, but I know that a lot of people want to be in a community, want to strive towards a vision and want to achieve something as a team. And if you can invest in those people, if you can give people the opportunity to shine, but also be part of the leadership too, because they're part of that culture and driving it forward. I think that's so important. For me, those things have really worked. I think it's also a learning process. I think I really encourage everyone in my team to come to me and tell me where something didn't work or where I could have done something better. And I actually love it when people give me that direct feedback and then we change something up, or we look at doing something differently, or we get help from someone else outside the team. And I think that, again, for me is really dynamic, where you can be open to both the good and the bad coming to you and figure out that journey. So yeah, those are some of the things that day to day is going on.
Excellent. And I think most of us who come to these spaces, we agree that we would like to see spaces that are dynamic, and we know the kind of leadership that we appreciate. But how do we work with people that oppose or that are slightly more resistant? How do we address that? How can we bring people on board in terms of understanding the benefits of being more dynamic, inclusive, and open in our leadership styles?
So there's some people who aren't inclusive who aren't on board with the diversity inclusion vibe. We were talking before this, and I'll let Laura make this point, because we were saying how, I'll let you make the messaging point. I think you should. That's a good one.
Yeah, so I think when we were talking before, one of the things I was saying is it's often understanding how the person you're communicating to needs you to communicate to them. So obviously we all communicate quite differently, we all need different things, but actually it's how do you, because the end goal is always the same. Is it that someone is motivated by finances? So actually if you sell them the financial benefit of improving the diversity kind of within the company, that might be the way you get the message through to them. Is it the community piece? Is it the CSR piece? What motivates them, and how can you then get the end goal that you want by communicating it in their style, I guess, would be my kind of take on the best way to get people who maybe, and I think it's also an understanding and a kind of creating a space where people feel they are able to kind of ask questions about things they don't understand and aren't going to be judged for not knowing things, I think is also really important.
Yeah, I think on that point, businesses are increasingly subscribing to the fact that diversity equals profitability. I've seen this all across business. People are deriving diversity because they're seeing that having that diverse opinion and challenge actually can lead to better results. And I think without it, you just have the same type of people making the same types of decisions. I think that's one way of going into that conversation. You know, some people are very stubborn and, you know, they're in their ways, and challenge is hard, you know, when you're challenged. So, yeah, I think everyone should subscribe to diversity and inclusion personally. I personally think that. But I think, like Laura said, you've got to find the right messaging.
Yeah, like you said, challenge is hard. And bringing us now to the question of dynamic leadership and that synergy between legal services and businesses. We're talking about, you know, women in business and law. What do you think are the main challenges for dynamic leadership in terms of bridging between law and businesses and getting them to work together?
So from a legal perspective, so my career started as a corporate solicitor doing M&A and corporate restructuring. I've now moved into a business strategy role that encompasses all aspects of business, including legal. So I'm often in meetings with CEOs, CFOs, and GCs all in one room. And I can give you a live example of something that I recently went into. So I was working with a pretty big entertainment company, and they were going through a huge restructuring. As you can imagine, this restructuring is touching upon so many aspects of their business. They're integrating, selling, moving people, etc. And the general counsel and the lawyers come into the room, and we've got an hour, and they spend, I would say, 45 minutes of that hour talking about a medium to low important contract as part of this huge restructuring. So as you can imagine, there were so many other things to think about: the tax, the balance sheets, the financials, people, pensions, operationally, the IT systems, and we didn't even touch upon any of those things because the GC who'd been tasked with this just was so focused on this contract. So what I would say is, this is almost to me like walking into a department store and you just go and look at the stationery and you don't go and check out all of the other stuff like the clothes and the shoes and the bags and everything else that's in there. And so I think with lawyers, they need to go into meetings with both a legal hat and a business hat. So instead of just coming in as a lawyer, I think there's so much value for lawyers, especially when they're going into these cross-functional type meetings that are impacting across the business, to think about it from both angles and know what meeting they're walking into. Are we walking into just a meeting about a contract, or are we walking into a much bigger meeting where I need to widen my perspective? I think that is the way that lawyers will influence more and get closer to the C-suite. For me personally, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and I think I don't have a law background, but have spent a lot of time working quite closely with a lot of lawyers. And I think for me, it's been more kind of keeping that understanding of the kind of the implications of the legal element of whatever you're working on. So obviously when it comes to business deals, there will always be like a legal aspect to it, whatever the size of it. And I think it's kind of keeping it an understanding in what you're doing and what my role is, how kind of, that's going to play into the wider piece. And I think it's a collaboration piece. I think it comes back to this kind of vision and focus and the dynamic element of you need to work as a team rather than work against each other. So exactly that, you need to understand what your meeting is, what it is, whether it's specifically something that's on the legal element and you're working with the lawyers, or whether you're doing something else, but actually bearing in mind that you may need to consult your legal team at some point as part of the process, I think is important. And I think they're complementary. I think it's exactly that. How do you work together to get the outcome?
Law is driving business. I have seen this during Brexit, where regulatory change has driven business decisions, and I think we should always, law can be the driver for business change, and I think lawyers should always remember that, and vice versa for business people to understand the law, because it's often an incredibly important element. So, yeah.
Fantastic. And what value do you think that brings both to the organization and to the individual? Because we're talking about being dynamic and about, considering multiple vantage points and not being not thinking, oh, I'm a lawyer, I will only do law, I'm a business person, I don't really know law. What do you think is the value that ultimately is brought to the organization as well as on a more individual basis?
I think coming back to the point that Meera made earlier about kind of always being open to feedback, I think it's sort of knowing where your knowledge gaps are. So I think it's understanding that as humans we're never going to know everything, and we're always going to, have something. So actually it's that again, coming back to it, the collaboration piece of like the dynamic, movement, the fluidity of working with your team and where the skill sets are. It's understanding that actually working together you're going to get the outcome quicker, easier, and probably a better outcome by bearing it in mind, but consulting the experts would be, I guess, my take on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a couple of things. I'd say that I think we're in a world now that's looking to solve problems, and sometimes the legal solution is not the business solution, and sometimes the business solution is not the legal solution. It's great when they are both aligned, but together people have got to come together and find the right solution. And I also think that, and I can see that there's students in the room as well, this is so important. If you are a law student and think that you just need to know law, you are mistaken, because having business knowledge, and I think in the law world it's called commercial awareness, having that commercial awareness is so important. I mean, I dedicated an entire chapter to this in my book because I came into law not realizing how important that commercial awareness was, and I really had to teach myself to be good at it. I had to teach myself how to read the FT, how to read The Economist, how to make business conclusions that were applicable to law firms. So you can never start this stuff too early. And then if you've got that kind of running commercial awareness, that will then start to play out in your career, and you will be a much better legal person because of it. So I would highly encourage anyone who's a student to start thinking about the business angle as well as the legal angle, especially if you're looking to go into kind of a corporate city career, for sure.
Wonderful. I'll just ask one more question before we open to the audience. In the meantime, you can get your questions ready so that it can be very smooth. How do you think that we become allies and create networks for each other so that we can build this kind of network of support and we can help each other?
Oh, so many things. I think you can do it in your job, and I think you can do it outside of your job. So for me, at work, I'm trying to mentor the people in my team and people outside of my team, and spotting opportunities for women specifically to shine. I think I'm always trying to do that because I'm so grateful for the people that gave me that space to go and shine, or to even go and make mistakes, to learn and become better. And then outside of work, I often will get approached, and this is the reason why I wrote the book. I often get approached by people saying, can you mentor my friend? Can you mentor my sister? So-and-so wants to be a lawyer. And I was mentoring so many people at one point, and I was running out of time. So I thought, let me just put it all down and share it with the world, and hence why I wrote this book. And it's so accessible. So I'm really hoping that people can read it and find it very valuable. And that for me is being an ally to, so I was the first person in my family to go to university. My parents didn't go to university, my parents aren't lawyers, and I remember that journey from being a law student at King's to qualifying as a solicitor at Latham & Watkins by the time I was 24. Everyone looked at that journey and probably thought it was really easy, but behind that was this person that was trying to figure it all out. I was making mistakes. I was trying to find mentors. I was trying to find connections. I was definitely graduating during the financial crises and really working quite hard to figure out what this path was, because I realized it wasn't just about working hard, it was about working smart and knowing people and knowing certain things that I wasn't getting from where I grew up. And I grew up just outside Croydon, and I was really trying to establish that route for myself. And as I look back, and when I mentor people and when I wrote this book, so many of those things aren't easily available. I realized that no one writes this stuff down. And maybe that's the reason why so many women, so many ethnic minorities are not, leveling the playing field here. So for me, I think be an ally by sharing your knowledge, by helping the people that come after you, by paying it forward, don't think that it's over by the time you kind of get to where you want to get to. And then always finding those opportunities for people to shine and grow, because there's always space for another person. You know, I think one of the things I try and practice is like having an abundance mindset and not living in scarcity, thinking, okay, because there's an opportunity for me, there isn't one for like these two other girls, for example. That isn't true. You create opportunity, and you can like multiply that for other people, and it's just abundant. And so these are some of the things that I've learned, and hopefully that's helpful to people here. I'm sure people may share that experience as well.
I think probably just to echo exactly that, I think paying it forward is really important. I think I've got to where I am now through a lot of people kind of taking the time to speak to me and tell me about what I do, you know, what careers are open. I had no idea my job existed when I was at university. I didn't know this industry is, and I love it. And I think exactly that, there's enough space at the top for everyone. I think it's whether that's you can put someone in touch with someone who's the right connection for them. And I think also what helped me is don't be afraid to reach out to people, especially the King's community is massive. I know if someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn, especially if they're from King's, I'll try and accept as many as possible, but I'll know that, you know, send someone a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, your career looks awesome, can you tell me more about it?
If they don't reply, don't be offended.
Yeah.
You know, just write to another person.
Yeah, I remember being told the worst thing anyone can say to you is no, and it's not personal. Like, it's really not. Like, if I've not replied to someone, it's definitely just because it's got lost. It's not that I've consciously said no. And I think that really helped because, you know, generally people are, I mean, nice. I think hopefully, maybe that's me being naive, but a lot of people do want to help everyone else. So please do reach out to people, find out what other jobs exist, find out what you want to do, and yeah, keep paying it forward.
Yeah, I think there's also a way to reach out to people, because this is what I've learned, is that there's a strategic way to get a good response from someone or to get ignored. So I think there's a way to be, you know, professional in how you reach out to people, but also specific and personal. And there's definitely a way to create a message that will garner a reply more than, say, just, you know, I went to this great lecture, and this lady was talking about LinkedIn, and she was saying that you should always personalize a LinkedIn invite. If you would like a reply, you really actually want to talk to that person, instead of just adding that person on LinkedIn and then getting them to accept your invite, because people love that personal message in the LinkedIn. And, you know, I think that was a really good tip for me, and encourage everyone to personalize their invites.
Yes, I think definitely the personal is always the way. On this positive note, I open now for questions from the audience.
Hi, thank you very much for the very interesting talk. I had a question. I think this kind of goes out to all of you, because I think it's very specific for women at the workplace, and I just wanted to understand your take on it from the perspective of working earlier in your career to now being where you are, where you're leading teams specifically. So I think this was a study that was done by the Atlantic about 4 or 5 years ago, and my brother sent this to me when I was just starting out law school, to be like, okay, you need to read this, you need to understand this. Where the study was basically, if there's a team in an office which has both male and female workers, let's go with male and female workers for now. For example, if there is an internal job position that gets open and the company list says, okay, you need to have A to E qualifications to be able to apply for this job. According to the study, a male worker will look at it, be like, okay, you know what, I don't have A, B, and C. I do have D and E, so let me just take a shot and apply. Whereas a female worker will be like, okay, I have A to D, I don't have E. Maybe because I don't have E, I won't get the job, so let me just not apply. And that goes same for participation in the boardrooms, where a male worker may have like an idea formed, say about 60% of the way through, and they'll just speak it out loud and they'll workshop it while speaking it, and then contrast it to a female contemporary who will be like, okay, I know everything, I have read everything about this, but is still unable to speak because she feels not confident. So in your experience, as you've been working from where you started to where you are now, do you think that's applicable? If it is, how do we actively, who are starting out in our professions or who are very new in our professions, how do we work to combat it? And then conversely, what do you think the role is for managerial or admin level people such as yourself who are higher up on the team who can encourage that this maybe not be the case anymore?
Completely, yeah. I think it's I've seen kind of this a few times, and I think I remember I think it's my rowing coach told me confidence breeds success. So it's going for it. Personally, when I was first getting into the kind of the corporate investigations, like intelligence sector, found this job for a director of Latin American kind of research, and technically I met the skills. Obviously I didn't have the experience, but I applied for it because I was like, you know what, technically I've got the language skills, and while I didn't get an interview for that, I got an interview for an analyst position. So that time it paid off. I think the way I've looked at that is put your name forward. It then gets your name out there. The worst, all you've lost is maybe a few hours of your time, and you've perfected your CV and you've written another cover letter. So it's worth throwing your name in the hat. So I definitely, that'd be my top tip, is if you see anything that's interesting, go for it. Just be like, you know what? Because you never know who you're competing against. And if you don't get it, it could also just be, it's not that you're not good enough, it's just there's someone else who's got the niche skills, and had you not been competing against them, you would have. And I think for me now that I'm kind of in a more senior position, I think I'm really conscious of if roles come up, or when I've been kind of working with kind of interns or kind of more junior members who are applying for other jobs, just kind of giving them the confidence boost to apply for things or sending things their way, I think is something that when you've got that experience, you can help. But yeah, go for it is my advice. Like, it's awesome. And if it sounds interesting, and kind of reach out to people. If you're applying to companies as well that you don't know, always look on LinkedIn and see if you've got any connections or if you've got any mutual connections. So you might have a second degree connection, and always, if you can, reach out to that person and be like, hey, I'm looking at this company. Do you think you could introduce me to this person so they can tell me what it's like? But yeah, go for it.
That's a good tip. I've heard of this study. I think that study's definitely been done. I imagine it's true in all those aspects. I think for women especially, definitely, I agree with Laura. Go and apply for the role. Give it your best shot. If you don't get the job, that may mean that you're not right for it right now. They may come back to you, because I've had this, come back to you like a year later or 2 years later and say, hey, look, we actually had this other spot open up. We really liked you. And actually, you might have something on the job spec that isn't even written on the job spec. I've written job specs for my own team, and I've met people who have skills that are beyond the job spec. And then I think, maybe we should hire somebody like that. And the other thing is, I feel like in my career, I've been incredibly entrepreneurial. The jobs that I've had, I've effectively created for myself. So one thing that I would advise everyone is to know yourself and know what you're good at and know how you can add value somewhere, because you can go and create a job for yourself somewhere, and that's some of the best jobs you'll ever have. So for sure, I think don't be taken by just what's written on a page. Ask yourself how you can add value. The other thing I've seen people do, which is a really great way to get a job, is show how you can add that value in an interview or in a conversation with somebody in that company. Because as soon as you've done that, you've already sold yourself to the company that you're worth hiring. So there's so many ways to get a job. And and I think part of it is also confidence, and Laura started off with that. There's also this wheel, I don't know if anyone's heard of it, it's called the confidence competency wheel. And it effectively says that if you show yourself you're competent, you then get more confidence. And then when you get more confidence, you do something again. I think always be acquiring skills, always be acquiring knowledge. And the more that you do that, the more confident that you will get. So, competency also breeds confidence, is very similar to what Laura was saying. So hopefully that's enough food for thought.
Add more of an organizational approach. I mean, there's ample research on that subject, and Jules itself has done research on the question of language, and it's not just when it gets to your first job, but even the subjects that you decide to study at school and then subsequently at university, because the question of language. And we have an employers board, and we work directly with employers in terms of thinking about the type of language that you use, because the goal is to attract the best talent, but you don't have to write exceptional candidate. Because what does that mean, exceptional candidate? Is that, am I exceptional? Maybe most days of the week. But, so it's about really thinking, what's the goal? What kind of talent are you hoping to attract? And then what language will more likely attract this kind of talent? And I think you look at what you already have, and if you want something different, then perhaps something needs to change. And so I think, like I said, we work very much from the perspective of changing organizations and the way they work and how they recruit. And so there is an organizational aspect. Everything that they said obviously makes sense, the perspective of confidence, etc. But I think change has to come both ways, and I think we have to meet in the middle. And organizations, and whenever you are at decision-making positions, remember that you also have a role to play in terms of, if you want to attract the best talent, you have to also change. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Hi, thank you so much for all the advice. And so you may have touched upon that, but I wanted to know, how did you operate that switch, that progression, like from being an employee, executing orders, to being a manager, a leader, and what is your advice to demonstrate that you are ready to improve your position to the hierarchy?
Yeah, so I think for me, the difference between somebody who just comes and does a job and is an employee, and then the difference between someone who comes and does a job and leads, is the ability to lead on a solution and take that away. So problem solving, that's the difference between someone who is not paid a lot and someone who's paid a lot, I think, to be honest. It's, can you lead and can you problem solve? So for example, if something happens within your organization and a problem comes up, you don't go and sit and wait for direction. You go and ask, how can I solve this? What are the top 3 things I can do to at least move towards a solution? And then go and discuss that with somebody in your team. That is, for me, the main difference in moving between grades.
Yeah, and I think being proactive is a really big thing. But I think it's also, previously when I've had it, I've been in quite small companies before now, and sometimes it's also just taking that initiative and showing that perhaps you're doing more than your job description. So perhaps you're saying, look, actually, this is my job description, but I'm also doing X, Y, and Z, so I should be promoted, or I should have a new job title, or I should be leading a team. And I think it comes back to this kind of being open to criticism's maybe a bit too harsh, but open to where your growth is. I think that's something for me. I always want to grow. I always want to know what I can be doing more of. So I think showing that kind of leadership, showing that vision, showing that kind of going above and beyond is really important. But I think also sometimes it comes down to having a really good manager. I think, unfortunately, sometimes it's the company culture. And I think if you end up in a space where actually you don't have that growth room, I think it's not being afraid to move, and going, you know what, maybe I've grown all I can here. What skills can I take and use them in the next slot? But yeah, it's a great question.
There is a question.
Hi. So what I just wanted some advice on, I guess, is how do you sort of garner that confidence to really stand up and express your ideas and make yourself heard and known? Because what I've found in a lot of cases in the past is, if there is a present leader who's doing a fine job, usually I don't interfere, I don't mess with the plan, I just go with it, do my best, But sometimes, especially when it's a team who I'm not necessarily comfortable with, I don't know them very well yet, I don't know how the banter flows, I kind of feel a little bit shy, and it takes me a little while to warm up and to really sort of speak up and express my ideas. So I guess what I want to know, and especially as a woman, sometimes I feel like in certain situations, you know, I haven't been taken very serious because, you know, I'm the cute young intern, and, you know, it doesn't matter what I say, and I don't have any experience. And, you know, I also start questioning myself, like, oh, maybe I don't have enough experience to even question these people with, you know, years in the industry, etc. So how do you find the balance between, you know, respecting your superiors, but also being confident enough to, you know, make yourself heard and make suggestions and involve yourself?
I think it comes with time. I think I've found. I think it's also the nerves are completely real. Like, I think it's realizing that everyone's really nervous. Like, I'm currently quite nervous being on the stage. And I think what I found is the more people I speak to, the more I find everyone's like, yeah, I feel exactly the same. And I think it's really scary, but it's just putting your ideas forward and realizing that your ideas are really valid. And especially when you're putting forward something that is going to make the company better, or it's another idea, it's kind of suggesting it as an alternative. Or again, it's tricky when it's a new team and you don't know how it works yet, but again, I think it comes back to this communication piece. Do you know what's motivating the team? What's going to get them kind of most kind of, you know, understanding? And I think hopefully, I think companies are getting better. I think some aren't, you know, still have a way to go, but I think hopefully if you're in a supportive team, they'll realise the skills you're bringing and the value you're adding. But yeah, like lots of deep breaths and lots of just, I think, yeah, realising what's the worst that can happen, and if they're not very supportive, then that's on them and not you, and try not to take it personally. Again, I'm better at giving advice than taking it, but that would be my tip.
I've got a tip for you. What's your name, sorry?
Lisha.
So I can relate to everything you're saying. I've walked into meetings as a qualified lawyer managing a team, and someone's just asked me to make the tea. I can relate to that. I've had that so many times, you know, and people still think I'm, you know, very young even now. And so what I would say to you is that when you are junior, you often don't get that. Especially if you're in a meeting with a lot of senior people, you often don't get that space like the senior people do to talk for about half an hour, right? You get like 2 minutes to say something, if at all. What I would say is, as a junior person, be prepared for that meeting. And when you do get your 2 minutes, make sure you get your 2 minutes. Don't go to meetings and say nothing. Say something so valuable and so poignant that every senior person in that room will remember it. And the more you do that, the more they'll give you the space and the more confident you'll get. And I noticed that as I started to go to meetings, I'll prepare quite a lot, and then I'll have a couple of things to say. And women, I think, are very good at this. We will often like listen to men talk for ages, and then we'll say this one thing, and it's like, bam, that thing was like gold. And so if you can do that, and you can keep doing that, I think that's a winning formula. And it's worked for me, and I hope that can work for you too.
No, definitely. I mean, I often tell students that I teach, know what you bring to the table. I mean, students come and they have to write essays, and they're like, oh, but what do I have to say? You need to say something. Know what you bring to the table, and when you don't feel confident, remember that. This is what I bring to the table, and just kind of hold on to that.
Okay, hello everyone. It's been a wonderful evening so far. My name is Pamela Omotosho. I'm with Kingfisher PLC. Meera, I just want to commend you on the work you've done with regard to inclusivity in your area of work. Well done. I do wish you very well. Best wishes for the future for that.
Thank you.
But I've been a commercial lawyer now for about 23 years, and I've worked sort of a city, gone in private practice, then in-house, and I've worked at about 4 PLCs so far. And you know, the word diversity for me has become a fashionable word, and it's disheartening for me because where I work, I'm always only the only person there. And I find it very, very hard to believe this. We don't have other women like me with my background who are just as good as I am in these institutions. And right now where I am, I've been happy all through my career and wherever I've been, but it's disheartening seeing this. And I've been used as a poster girl recently for diversity. I'm the only one in the group. I'm the only one in the place. I was in Sainsbury's. I'm the only one there. And it's a huge burden to be used as diversity when it's not genuine diversity. Now, what I want to ask you, Meera, and well done for what you're doing, How are you able to work so that you genuinely are able to include a very wide pool of genuine, diverse, applicants who I'm where I am by merit, and I hope there are many other women like me who will be there on merit. How are you able to work to have your pool to be so generally diverse, you're able to see, to include people who will not otherwise have the opportunity that you're giving them? And I feel a lot of work has got to do with HR, and I just feel HR are really, they need to spruce up. And I'm saying, and I'm not angry, but I've been through this for 20 years. Everywhere I am, I'm the only one. I go to Sainsbury's, Debenhams, Kingfisher, TUI Group, I'm the only one. That cannot be. So I just want to thank you, and I just wish you well, and I hope that you'd be able to work to genuinely give visibility to people like me who are just good and good even better, and should be given a chance to be able to move forward in their careers and not just be contract worker, paralegals, and throw out the system. So just best wishes there. And I just hope
Pamela, love back at you.
Sorry?
keep being the one in the room, but keep trying to bring more into the room with you.
How do
I
you
think.
bring one into the room when it's?
Yeah, I can tell you how I do it. So I agree with you. I think a lot of organisations have signed up to diversity and inclusion. They've also signed up to sustainability. It's not about just signing up to stuff. It's about actually actioning this. The way that I action this through my recruitment is, so we have recruiters that go and recruit for the business. I will have a very, very clear and candid conversation with those recruiters about the types of candidates we're looking for. When we receive CVs back, if I receive back 10 CVs of just men or 10 CVs of just the same type of person, I will push back on that recruiter and say, go and find me this. You're not looking hard enough. Work better. Because I think it's up to leaders to do that, honestly. Otherwise, recruiters are just going to send you a bunch of CVs, and I think it's up to leaders to push back and say that. And I know by doing that, I've had CVs come through that didn't come through the first time, right? So that's one practical way in which I'm trying to do it.
I'm not in a position of being able to recruit people. I'm just one of the lawyers there. It's not my remit to do that, or I'm not able to do that. And that's why I called out to you to say well done to you, and hopefully you would be, even, like you've said, you do now, and it's impressive. Not just women, and genuine merit too. It'd be lovely to go and see people there, not just one like me, but many like me who are there on merit too. Yeah. Lots of them are out there.
And then I think once you get there and you are in that position to hire, I wasn't always in the position to hire. I just, this recently happened to me in the last few years. I said to myself, I was like, Meera, you've worked at this, you've worked for so long. Now you're in this fortunate position to hire. Do things differently. And if you get pushback, then you get pushback. But just do it. I guess if you're in-house, right, which is what you're saying you are, you're reliant on your HR people, technically, unless you are asked to build out your team and then you have more of a say. But then it's about company culture, and that has to be led from the top primarily. So it's going to need a lot of people to gather around and primarily lead it from the top. I'm hoping that as more and more women, as more and more ethnic minorities, and more people who are in that diversity and inclusion mindset, get to the top, things start to change, and that old kind of vanguard disappears, and things start to change. But it takes not just me; it takes Laura, other people in other organisations to do this. Otherwise, it's a very lonely place to be.
Hi, I'm Tia. So I was just wondering, when you find your first job after university, how important is it to be selective? Like, do I have to have a clear vision, or can I just get a job in the city and build my way up?
I think this one's for me. So I've taken a bit of a weird and wonderful career path. And I would say everything, the best way I've thought about it is looking at everything as a building block. So I'd be selective to a point, because I think, especially as we've talked about, company culture is really important, the role is really important, I think the team is really important. So I'd make sure you're getting something from your first role, but I also wouldn't worry if you don't get onto, depending on what you're looking for, a big name grad scheme or whatever. I think you can still get there in the end, you can still, if that's your dream. But I think it's also, you learn lots of different things. So I've been in a lot of small companies and learned a lot more from being in a smaller team, because you get more responsibility. Plus, you know, if you're in a big team, you get different experience. So I think find something you enjoy, find something that's going to give you a skill set. And I think perhaps it's just my experience, but I've not felt it's hindered me having worked for a number of different companies and different roles. I think it's actually given me a bit of an edge, because it just means I can talk about different experiences. And yeah, I guess that's my my advice on that one. But yeah, find something you enjoy and see how it goes. And I'm really excited for everyone who's kind of newly graduating and starting out on their careers. I think there's a lot of scope, and I think, yeah, look forward to seeing where you all go.
Hi, so I think you may have talked about this a bit, but my question really is on practical tips that you can give women in advancing their careers to management, especially in companies that you have male dominance in management positions. And my question also borders on what visibility strategies you can advise, and even speaking styles, because I know that I've attended some like executive education where they've said when women say a lot of they speak and they're not very sure of how they're speaking, it affects. So a lot of times, and even in this Congress and in this meeting, we've had a lot of, you know, words like I think, and I know sometimes men don't say that. So are there practical tips you can give us so that it comes off like we are more confident? Because I know that we are, but when we're speaking, sometimes it comes off like we are not. So yeah, I'm looking to advance to management, and I'm very curious as to your take. Thank you very much.
So I've heard that thing about I think. You should not say I think, you should say I believe, much stronger. I try and catch myself if I'm ever doing it. Or if I'm writing an email, I'll never be like, I think this should happen. I'm like, I believe this should happen. And so I've definitely heard that. I think the other thing is what has led to advancement is not necessarily the thing of what you see in your day-to-day job. It's actually the stuff you do outside. So networking stuff like this, doing your own personal development, doing stuff outside of work that scares you a bit so that you can come into work feeling more confident and building that confidence. I think people underestimate the importance of self-development outside of the workplace to channel development in the workplace. I think men are very good at this actually compared to from what I've seen. Also building connections. I think connections could be your next job. Connections are also the people that will give you advice and tips and experiences that you can learn from. And knowing, if you're seeking to go into management, I think at that point it's knowing what kind of leader you want to be, knowing where you want to go, and having that, you know, mindset, and not backing down from it. If you truly know that you want it, just keep going for it, and persistence is key. So there's all these things that I would encourage you to do. Let me think if I've got any more tips.
Yeah, again, I'd second that. I'm trying to be a lot better with emails, especially because you have the time to kind of look back and take all the I possibly maybe was just wondering if. So I kind of go back and kind of think about the words you're using, and I think exactly that, building your profile within the company, so kind of getting involved in kind of cross-team activities, whether that's, so I've kind of started getting involved in a lot of the engagement piece, which is really interesting and is meaning I'm getting exposure to kind of senior managers that I never would get in my day job, and that builds your profile. They know who you are, they know how good you are, and that helps internally. And I think the external piece as well, I think you can get leadership team experience from outside of your day job. So I'm on the leadership team for Women in International Security, which is like a networking group for women who work in all forms of international security or studying in it. And that has given me the team experience, which I can then bring into the day job. So you can then say, when you're in an interview and they ask, can you give me an example of when you've led a team? It doesn't have to be in your day job. It can be a sport, it can be a hobby, it can be an idea you came up with. It's whatever it is. And I think that sort of passion and drive can come through from things outside of the day job, as well as kind of within them, would be my tips on that. Yeah.
Who had the hand up, sorry? Yeah? Two more, I'll do one or two as final questions. Yeah.
Hi, I just had a question. So I'm from, I sit on the board of the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts for around the world. And I was looking, and kind of we look at kind of female empowerment. And the question type for looking at the next generation of female leaders was, what advice would you give to help empower the next generation of female leaders?
I think it's I think a lot of it's the self-belief. I think a lot of it's the belief that you can do anything. I think it's the belief that just because you're female, it shouldn't stop you from doing whatever you want to, I think is really important. And I think it's giving girls the space to dream, and kind of that support, I think, is really important, because I think we were talking about this before. It's bringing up the younger generation, so there is a pipeline, and how do we make sure that people don't stop progressing in their career when they're younger, or don't move on, not from the grad scheme, to carry on as we were talking before. I think, giving the space and making sure that dreams are important, whatever they are. I think it's such a personal thing. I think whatever you want to be and whatever you want from your life is really important.
Yeah, I guess from my side, look, I think it's great, that message of empowering women. I think it's brilliant what you're doing and the work that you're doing. I'm going to be biased and say that women can empower themselves through a career in law. And I say this because becoming a lawyer was one of the most empowering things I did. I think law is an agent for change. And often women can change the world we are living in through understanding law. You don't have to become a lawyer, but understanding law and being interested in what is going on in your community. I think you can become a complete agent for change through empowering yourself through understanding law. So that's a very biased answer. But for me, it was an incredibly empowering thing to do, and it translates into my life outside of work too. If I see an injustice happening, I'm like, oh my God, we've got to sort this out. So that's a very biased answer, but empower yourself through law.
Thank you.
If I can just add, I would say empower boys at the same time. I think talk to them, bring them on board. I mean, we've been having this conversation for more than 50 years. Bring them on board.
Hi everybody, my name's Jamie, and first of all thank you to the three of you for putting on such a wonderful event, and the whole team as well. It's been great. What I would say first of all is so much of what you shared and so many of the questions that everybody has shared here, I share so many of those sentiments. I'm a graduate, I studied business management, and I sort of fell into a job working for financial advisors, and it was the first job out of uni, and similar to what you said, it was more about having the building blocks for the next step, even though I didn't think it was necessarily the right one. But actually over the years, sort of worked my way from the bottom up, sort of from a PA all the way to becoming sort of a financial advisor and a wealth manager myself, and looking after my own clients, being self-employed, all the things that I sort of thought that would never happen, it has. But what I would say is that in the industry and what I do, 90% of all financial advisors in the country are male, pale and stale, as I describe them. So they are white, they are over the age of 50, and they're men. So as a woman who is a woman of colour, under the age of 30, so many of the sentiments that everybody has shared, people meet me and think, what, you're an advisor? Or you manage wealth, all that sort of stuff. And similar to what people have said, aren't taken seriously, or, I feel like I might be undermined. And as much as I have the self-confidence and the self-belief to push myself forward, like you've said, in those rooms where I'm the only person that looks the way that I do, or comes from a background like I do, similar to you, Meera, And I understand that on LinkedIn, you can reach out to people and, you know, make those connections to see actually what's the next step, or how can I help people that are sort of, say, a few years behind where I was. But other than LinkedIn, in your experience, what have you found is a great way to connect people? Because even an event like this is wonderful to share those thoughts and sentiments, but in more of a practical way, how can I, one, you know, reach out to, say, people that are further along their journeys, or, you know, further along in their careers, whether it be in sort of financial advisory, what I'm in, or elsewhere, and also people that are, say, further behind that I'd love to help them too. As you said, it's all about sharing. So yeah, I guess apart from LinkedIn, is there anything that you both have done that you found really helps to sort of share and link people together?
So I can relate to that, you know, in terms of when I look at the people above me, similar kind of description to what you just described. The way I've seen it has actually been to, I mean, you know, men have mentored me in a very positive way. And, you know, I think we were saying this earlier, let's not forget about the men. And I take little bits of that mentorship from various men that have mentored me, and I then calibrate it within myself, and because I'm not going to be another male leader, I know that. But I also recognize some great characteristics in them. And I recognize them, and I take them, and then I calibrate it within myself, and then say, okay, how can I take that but make it more me? And then I find women, either in my organization or outside of my organization, or even in a different industry. So I'm in law and business strategy, but I know women in asset management, for example, who are really creating waves in asset management. And there's stuff that I learned from them that I then kind of calibrate into my own leadership style. And then we're living in this age of social media, and I just find women on YouTube or on the internet, and I'm just like, wow, who is this woman? And they don't even have to be in London. They're in the US, so I work with like a circle of women who are female leaders in New York, and they're incredible, and I just kind of came across them. And so I think don't be focused on your organization, because there's a whole world outside. And then just know that one of the things that frustrated me, Jamie, was that there's no blueprint for me. I was like, where's the blueprint? Who do I copy? Who can I be like? Where's my role model? And I was just sat there thinking, there isn't one. And then I thought, well, you're just going to have to create one, Meera. And that's what I just do. I just create it, and then in the hope that I take all those bits and then inspire, you know, the next person who comes up under me. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment in terms of figuring it out. And yeah, I can relate to everything you're saying. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, I think just add kind of, look at whether there's any professional networks that have, like, whether it's a mentorship scheme, whether it's just a general networking. I think I found those really helpful for kind of finding people ahead of me who I can learn from. And I think it's using kind of for looking for people who are younger, perhaps. I think it's stuff like the King's Network, like volunteering as a mentor for the King's Network, for finding people, or whether it's, again, if you're, I don't know if any organisations you work with have like a CSR outreach that works with schools. I know I've done a couple of those through work, and they're really awesome, because you're then working with the next generation and starting the 14-year-olds who can go, oh yeah, actually that sounds like a really cool job, I'd love to get there, and build the connections that way. And I think, again, the kind of the cross section, so I think it's kind of finding a whole, sort of like a board of mentors, right? Like it's everyone kind of picking the best of all the people around you. And I think, again, I'd come back with the worst anything anyone can say is no, and hopefully they won't. But I think, it's a really important, something I'm definitely keep on trying with, and I think it's a really great thing, and people will benefit from mentoring you and also you mentoring them. So great work.
Right. Well, I want to firstly thank our amazing panel, leader Laura and Meera. If we can all give her a round of applause for the amazing discussion. The evening hasn't finished. I know there's some of you who has many more questions to ask, so we'll break into a refreshment reception, so please continue the conversations. Don't forget some of the amazing things that the speakers talked about. We have an amazing mentoring program through the alumni team where you can connect with students. Our executive education course at King's Business School, if you're really interested in tackling, the system, we've got a gender inclusive course as well. So come and ask our team, come and speak to us. But thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.